Today I thought we'd talk a little bit about farming, or at least some policies around farming. Um, it is, after all, the Liberty Minded Agrarian, so might as well. Um, I grew up in upstate New York, 4 or 5 hours north of the city. It's pretty rural. Um, New York, believe it or not, has lots of very rural areas. The further away you get away from the city, the more rural it becomes. Um, and that was where I grew up. Once I got married, my wife and I kind of bounced around a little bit. We ended up in Vermont, and we called that home for a couple of years. And one of the problems we found, we wanted one person to be able to stay home with the kids. We wanted to be able to have some meat animals, right? We had a few meat rabbits. We had some chickens. We had a couple vegetables, but nothing of really any substance. And that wasn't really what we wanted to do. So we looked for land, and land ended up being insanely expensive. And on top of that, the regulations to build once you actually got your land were also incredibly expensive. And so it just basically kind of chased us out. And, that is happening quite frequently in New England, in the Northeast and all really. Lots of people are kind of headed out. It's just too expensive. People can't afford to live there anymore. And one of the interesting things about this, right? It's one thing for people to move out, and you find a job and maybe you can make ends meet. One of the issues that is coming about is that it's hard on farmers, right? The cost of living is hard on farmers. Now how? Why? Well, prices are subsidized, right? So when the cost of living goes up, when land prices go up, taxes go up, farmers get some sort of subsidies for that, right? It covers some, it doesn't cover all of it, it covers some of it. But the older farmers aren't hit as bad as the new farmers. If you want to be a new farmer, you want to purchase some land and you're gonna work the land, well, good luck. Right, because now you're not just buying vacant land. You're buying vacant land that is going to be developed, right? So you're competing with developers that have lots of money that can pay to build on those houses. That can pay a substantial amount more because they're going to be putting up they're going to be able to get a bigger return out of the land than a farmer would. Right, you can put 10 houses in 5 acres and make a whole bunch more money than you would putting a few cows on the same acreage. And one of the places in New England that's feeling this the most is Rhode Island. They actually, believe it or not, have the highest number of new farmers, and a lot of those farmers are leaving. Well, again, we look at it and it comes down pretty much to the cost of land. The U.S. average is about $3,000 per acre for farmland. In Rhode Island, it's $13,800 an acre. So it's over $10,000 more per acre to buy land in Rhode Island. And so since 1940, right, the Rhode Island has developed 80% of its undeveloped land. So that's pretty significant, right? It's been 80 years just about, and they've developed 80% of the undeveloped land. And so one of the reasons, right, that the cost of land has gone up, pretty much the main reason, is just simple supply and demand. There's not as much land left, and so the price of the land that's left goes up. Okay, that's how it happens. And it's also important to note that, Rhode Island is the smallest state we have, right? 37 by 48 miles. But it also has 400 miles of coastline. So, they have beaches and bays, and there's 400 miles of coastline. Anytime you get near environmental features that are desirable, the prices of land go up, the prices of houses go up. People are building second houses there. People are vacationing there. It changes the whole dynamic, and that should be something that's understood, right? It may not be ideal if you're someone that has lived there your whole life. Unfortunately, that's kind of the way of things. Anyway, so they have lots of coastline, right? It's pretty much all been developed, and of course with the coastline and everything else, the tourist industry and the taxes go up. And Rhode Island actually has they're ranked 7th in the country for tax burden, so they're up there. They get a fair bit of money from their citizens just for existing. So the state of Rhode Island is worried about their farmers leaving. We're worried about new farmers leaving, and so in order to keep them there, they've devised this new plan. Okay, now the state of Rhode Island already owns 2 farms in the state. One's a 150 acre tract, one's a 50 acre tract. So it's just 200 acres. It's not a huge amount, but the state is only 777,000 acres. So it kind of it adds up eventually if they keep going on that way. Anyway, the state owns 200 acres of land that they lease out to farmers to use for CSAs or farmers markets. There's even some community gardens involved in that. And I think it's important that we recognize that the state owns the land and they lease it to the farmer, and the farmer is expected to grow crops on it. You can draw your own conclusions there. I'm sure we've all heard something like that before. And so this new plan of Rhode Island's is pretty much just an extrapolation of what they've already done. And it's really pretty scary. So what the state of Rhode Island has decided to do is to buy land when it goes for sale. So I'm selling, 20 acres, and it's right near the coast, and I'm asking $500,000 for it, and that's the developable price. Rhode Island will come in and buy that from me for my $500,000, and then they will sell it at its agricultural value, which is about 80% less. So they'll take the $500,000 land and they will sell it for $100,000. That's an 80% loss, and it is absorbed by the taxpayer, right? Just try to imagine a business operating like that. It would never happen. You'd be bankrupt so quick. You'd be out of business so fast. You couldn't survive, right? But the state can survive because their pockets are endless. Because their pockets are lined with humans, right? They're lined by taxpayers. They really have no say. And by doing this, the people that they're trying to help, the farmers that they're trying to help, the people, the low-income people that they're trying to help, they're actually harming them. Okay, because that's what the state does. The state tries to help, and they always end up making a mess out of things. And again, with this, right, so they buy up the land, and land that was once developable, that land that was going to build, 20 apartment buildings is now being turned into a farm. So guess what that does to the cost of housing? It goes up. There's going to be less housing available. So Rhode Island already has their median home cost is about $50,000 more than the national average. So now they're gonna stifle home production. So what do you think that's going to do to the cost of all the other houses that already exist? They're going to go up. Now who's that going to affect? That's going to affect the person that is already having a hard time coping with the high cost of living. It's just going to make it worse for them. Okay, so the plan is that they're going to buy the land at fair market value. And then they're going to sell it back to the farmers as quickly as they can. Now this is what I get from their website. I'll put the link on the bottom here. They're going to sell the land back to the farmers as quickly as possible. But they don't give any definitive timeline. Right? Quickly as possible for who? For the state? because we all know how fast the state works. I mean, quickly as possible for two private individuals, I mean, that can go fairly quickly. But the state, well, when the state gets involved, it's going to take a long time. And there's lots of problems with that are unforeseeable. And pretty soon, as they buy this land up, they're going to be sitting on a pile of land. They're going to be stockpiling land, and that can be pretty problematic if they're not careful. And they're only going to buy land for sale. They're never going to force someone to sell it. But this is one step away from eminent domain. And with eminent domain, we all know their fair market value isn't the real value. It's not the actual cost, right? If the state wants to buy my land so they can put a road through it, I'm going to get a lot less money for it than if I sold it to somebody that's going to put up 2 houses. It's just the way it is, right? Eminent domain does not get you your fair market value. So to trust the state that they're going to offer fair market value is ridiculous. It's not going to happen. Now, they say they're never going to force someone to sell, but I mean, it doesn't take much for the state to lean on somebody and kind of force somebody into selling. We've seen it before where they're, you don't want to sell, well, somebody's going to come by and, some regulatory branch is going to step by and say, oh, hey, guess what? There's a stream that runs over there on that part of your land, and that's a wetland. And you can't have cows over there. In fact, you can't build over there. No, you might as well. No, you can't do that. It's not. They've done it before. They do it all the time, right? They label things as wetlands, and that's what they'll do. They also claim that, right, they're only going to hold this land as long as it takes for it to transfer. So they're going to buy this land without another party looking to purchase it in line. Okay, so there might be somebody there, there might not be somebody there. We don't know. State doesn't know. They're just going to buy it. So again, they're stuck holding this land, right? They're stuck with this land in their possession, keeping it out of development, keeping it. It's not going to be producing vegetables. It's going to be doing nothing. The state's just going to be owning it. And sooner or later, the state's going to start leasing that land out. The state is offering farmers the agricultural valuation. And as I said, that's about 80% less. But undoubtedly, eventually that valuation will go up. And maybe, right, maybe farmers decide that they don't want to live in Rhode Island. Maybe people start moving out. Maybe this doesn't keep people there. And so soon, nobody's going to want to buy the land at that agricultural valuation. Soon, that 20% value is going to be too high. And so here we are again, where the state doesn't have a purchaser, and they're going to be sitting on land. And if you do decide to buy this land, of course it's going to come with a caveat. Of course the deed is going to come, labeled with a clause in it that's going to restrict your sale in the future. And what's that restriction? Well, the land it must remain a farm. Okay, it has to be a farm. And what does that mean? Again, from the website, they don't really give you specifics, but broadly, it must continue to produce livestock or agricultural crops. So I have my land. I decided to farm for 5 years. I don't like it. It's too much work. There's no money in it, and I want to sell. Well, now I have to find a farmer that's willing to produce crops of some sort, probably on a commercial level, right? And I have to find that person. I have to make a deal with them. Well, we all know how hard it is to make a house sale, right? There's so many things involved. Well, now there's this other thing involved that I have to find a farmer who's going to be willing to do this and is going to be willing to buy it at a certain price. There's no free market there. There is nothing. That is complete control by the state. And you know, what happens if you can't find that farmer? You know, you're stuck there. You can't go anywhere. I guess you could default on it, right? You give it back to the state. You know, but here we go again. The state is accumulating this land. The state is amassing this land, right? It's no good. It's just no good, right? And we have the problem, of course, you know, when the state gets involved with crony capitalism. You know, what happens when my buddy down the road that I know, that I grew up with, has 100 acres of swamp, and he can't get a penny for it. But guess what? I work at the state, and you know what? I'm going to help him out. I'm going to buy that land from him as developable land, and I'll turn around and I'll sell it as farmland because I work in the state and I can make those decisions. Right? You run the problem of the state not allowing certain developers to come in. Right? What happens if there's a developer I don't like, who's been eyeballing this piece of property that runs between, you know, two of his existing pieces of property that he's built apartments on? Well, guess what? I'm going to come in and I'm going to swoop up that piece of land, and that guy's not going to have it because I'm the state and I can't do that, right? It's no good. It's absolutely awful. It's impossible, and the state and everybody else that lives there should know this and should be screaming at them, telling them that this is just communism wrapped up in another wrapper. It's insane, and it gives the state too much power to just accumulate land. It's disgusting. All right, but you know, so we look at this from a liberty perspective, right? From an idea of a free market. Okay, so the quantity of houses starts to decline, right? There's less supply. So the land prices go up, houses go up. Who gets forced out? The lower income folks, right? They can't afford to make $7.50 an hour and still live there. So they move out. Okay. So what happens? Well, now there's job vacancies. Look, if you own a office building, you need somebody to vacuum your floor. Whether it's, you know, it doesn't matter who it is. Well, as these people leave because they can't afford it because the jobs don't pay enough, guess what? The jobs are going to have to pay more. If I can't find somebody to sweep my floor for $7.50 an hour, I'm going to find somebody for $10. And if I can't, maybe I find somebody for $15. Now, some people will have moved out for sure, but there will still be jobs there. Those jobs don't disappear, and they will demand a higher price. Also, you have private organizations. Okay, Habitat for Humanity is already stepped up in Rhode Island in places. You know, for one example, there was a single divorced mom of two. I think her kids were like 8 and 10. She's a nurse. She makes about $40,000 a year, and she's having a hard time, you know, with housing. So Habitat for Humanity built her a house and then sold it to her for $110,000. Well below market value, probably right around cost. You know, and you have these private organizations that would no doubt step in and do this. Right? You might even have developers come in and do this type of thing, where they put up a high-rise on the ocean, you know, and then they go build a couple cheap houses for locals, right? Why not? And so, you know, they'll probably build rental units that are cheaper because they know people will move in and do that and use those resources because they can. The problem is, though, again, we get the state. The state's going to get involved, and they start subsidizing this, and it's no good, right? They put regulations on housing, they put regulations on crops, they tell you what you have to pay for your crops, they tell you what you can produce, what you can't produce. It just, right? When Rhode Island did this, one of the things they said was that they're concerned about the lack of local produce and the lack of healthy produce for their citizens. And again, these things would be available to the citizens of Rhode Island probably for, you'd have to pay a little bit more money for them, no doubt, but they would be there. And if people wanted to, they could purchase them, but they can't, right? What am I talking about? I'm talking about things like milk, things like cheese, things like meat. Milk that price is set, right? The farm bill sets the price of milk. It subsidizes it essentially, and a farmer can get about $2 to $3 a gallon for milk when they sell it off to the plant. Have you ever priced a gallon of raw milk? It's just about double that, if not more. What about meat? When you buy meat directly from your farmer, okay, it cuts out a whole bunch of stuff. The money goes right to the farmer, and it usually costs a little bit more, but it's usually a little bit better meat. But you can't do that, right? The farm can't sell their raw milk because I might get sick, right? Well, I'm making that decision. No one's forcing me to drink raw milk. Nobody's forcing me to buy hamburger from the farm down the road, right? But the state gets involved, and once again, we see them controlling the price of commodities and just stymieing the free market and making it next to impossible for everybody that lives there to get by, right? And look, I went to school for environmental studies. I have a deep appreciation for the environment. I love green space just for the sake of green space. And believe it or not, there are ways for citizens to do this, to keep spaces green, right? To keep undeveloped land undeveloped. My wife and I were looking at moving back up to New York, and land is very expensive, and we found someplace. It was like 100 acres, and it was listed at like $110,000. And of course, there's usually something wrong when the price discrepancy is that much. But I knew the area as a kid, and there were no landfills. There was nothing, no big highways nearby. It wasn't too swampy. There's a little bit of wetlands, but it wasn't like crazy. So we looked into it further, and as we did, we learned that the seller also thought the green space was incredibly important. And in the deed, they had it written into the deed that when it turned over, when it turned hands, that the new owner, the homestead site was already picked out, where you would put your house was already picked out, and the homestead site was only going to be 1 acre. So the rest of the land, the rest of the 99 acres, had to remain undeveloped, untouched. Right now, you could cut firewood out for your personal use. You might be able to cut some wood out of there to make your own cabinets and the like. But if you wanted to sell firewood for money as a commercial endeavor, or you wanted to make cabinets as a commercial endeavor, it was off limits. You could not graze animals off your 1 acre. You couldn't have a garden off your 1 acre. Your 1 acre homestead was your only thing, and the rest of the land was pretty much left untouched. Right? No ATV trails, no snowmobile trails, nothing like that. Now you could do hiking trails if you wanted, but you weren't allowed to do motorized traffic. And it really pissed me off, because it was just, 1 acre out of 100. Like, how about 5? How about 10? Just, I totally get it, but like, make it manageable for somebody that wants to do a small farm, a little hobby farm. But guess what? It doesn't matter what I feel. It doesn't matter what I think. Right? That seller, that person owns that land, and they understood that they were taking a loss. Right? That person, they could have sold that 100 acres for, $500,000, no problem. They could have cut it up into 3 lots and sold it for you could get $1 million for 100 acres of land if you cut it right. And they were willing to take that loss. And that's their decision. And I applaud them for that, right? They want to do that, they can. Right? If I want to voluntarily enter into that contract with them, then you know what, I'm going to live up to their expectations. Nobody's forcing me to do it. All right, I'm doing it of my own accord. Rhode Island, on the other hand, is forcing taxpayers to enter into a contract to buy land and then sell it at a loss, right? Rather than the property owner saying, you know what, I'm willing to take this loss because I think it's a worthy endeavor. The taxpayers in Rhode Island now have to face the brunt of that tax. They have to pay for that. They will feel that in the future every year as their tax bill increases, right? It is no good. It corrupts the free market. It gives the state more power. It gives the state the control over the means of production. It is no good, and it is unacceptable. Anyway, so I know that was a long one. I don't get it. I just don't get it. I don't get it. I don't understand how a state can wield that kind of power and how the people can be okay with that. But anyway, you can find me on Twitter. It's @bpangy. You can find me on steam.com /@bpangy. You can find me on Facebook. Search for Liberty Minded Agrarian, or the website www.libertymindedagrarian.com. Let me know what you think if you made it this far. I know it's long. I apologize, but we're trying new things, and I'm hoping to make this into a little podcast with some interviews with some friendly folks. We'll see. Anyway, appreciate it. Get out there, sow those seeds of liberty, and we can all reap sheaves of freedom together. Peace.